you don't really negotiate from the point of view of what are the future implications.
So that's a negotiation shortcoming.
Yeah, or the point of whom?
You know, just quickly, I know that we're talking about strikes generally, but in this particular scenario, we seem to have focused on one particular one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to the president's media chat on Sunday evening.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard what his explanation was on the situation with ASU.
Yeah.
And how he believes that some element of politics might have crept into it. He says that, they had gone to the universities, they had done a needs assessment, even after the 2009 agreement, and that government has pumped in some money already with promise of pumping in more, even though it doesn't quite meet what the 2009 agreement is. Do you think that, that explanation was acceptable enough?
You see, if you have a disagreement on implementation, there are techniques and methodology for addressing such. Not by insinuating political influence, which is not new in Nigeria in any case. It's not new.
And even if it's glaring.
Okay, now take for instance, which of the parties in crisis now can one say have what you might call a monolithic political perspective? None. Different universities, different institutions from different parts of the country. So that insinuation is not new. And that is typical of the Nigerian public sector. The least crisis, there's somebody somewhere manipulating it. And if you take that perception, the tendency is that you will to a large extent ignore the actual cause, what brought you to the crisis. As I said earlier, strike again in another sense is a form of quasi-social war between two parties. The instrument of war there is not guns or ammunition. It's more or less who wears each other out.
But in wars,
yes,
when agreements are reached, you abide by them.
That's the issue. So, as I said earlier,
the agreement, is it always a one-sided kind of agreement? Perhaps you should tell us.
As I said earlier, did the negotiation break down in 2009 or 2010 or 2011? It did not. How come that 3-4 years after? And in any case, my concern is not to keep blaming this party or that party. It's how do we work out amicable solution to this problem? Because, as I said earlier again, the character of the combatants, in particular the trade union aspect, these are institutions that their members are not just push away. They are knowledge-based. And 2, they have options. And 3, they have allies, either open or concealed. How will you feel if you find your prof on the picket line? There's sympathy. How will you feel if you have your child staying at home for too long? But I thought that if government as an employer now will downplay its role as the sovereign authority of the nation and say, look, what have we not done? And in fact, incidentally, I'm surprised, embarrassed that I will say with every modesty that today we have one of the most tested and matured Minister of Labor. In fact, it's one of the few ministers that I would say that his knowledge and skill tallies with his portfolio.
Is he handling this quasi-war very
I'm not
well?
sure he's playing much role. If you were, one could have seen it.
How do you mean?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
He's the one who's always, most cases have been seen in the front lines negotiating.
I don't think so. The entire thing,
who do you think is playing the role?
The entire thing is at the office of the SGF. And to my knowledge, that office, again, I accept that, the character too maybe is exposed as a politician.
They've been meeting. They actually started meeting with the Labour Minister.
But what has happened?
Before it moved to the SGF.
See, I'm just saying that...
Perhaps negotiation didn't have any headway, so they decided to go to the SGF.
No. You got it wrong. I suspect that the meeting will be within the framework of the appropriate ministry, University Commission, and the unions. The Minister of Labour comes in just as we have this impasse now. And that's why I'm doubting that, where are they? And I know that the minister himself, I'm not just boosting his image. It's somebody we all know has the skill. In fact, he's one of the few ministers whose skill and knowledge agrees with his portfolio. A lot others don't.
The question will then be, if he's got that skill,
Yeah.
and he's in government,
Yeah.
and today government is being said not to have met or not to be sticking with the agreement, even though they disagree with that, of what use is that skill if you can't deploy
Well, you see, again, if you know how government works, again, I'm not being authoritative there. I'm merely just, assuming. The role is playing, I don't know, but I know that in past crises of this nature, he's so versatile in providing options, approaches. In fact, it's even more embarrassing. The Wages Commission equally has a tested and well-respected chairperson. So with this area of technocrats who have competent knowledge on crisis.
Okay, Mr. Ejiofor,
yeah.
what would you do if you were the Minister of Labour and we have this case in our hands?
Well, I don't know how the government works now. Again, you can have the idea, but you may not have the authority or the mandate. But assuming they have the mandate, there are options. To the extent that the crisis is not a product of disagreement on the negotiating table ab initio, which means that what was agreed upon in 2009, 2010, 2011 is not in dispute.
I think it is.
What is in dispute, though? What is in dispute?
To some extent. Because when they talked about the needs agreement, they thought, look, because I think if I remember properly, the ASU chairman did say, look, they are trying to renegotiate the agreement.
Yeah.
And he then said, no, implement first,
Yes.
and then you can renegotiate.
Yes, yes.
And you don't call for a renegotiation.
Okay. What is the agreement in a sense? It says we shall pump into the universities X amount every year from 210 or 29, 210 or 29, 210, 211, 212. Now you say we'll pump in 100 billion. Yes, by our standard, it's a huge amount. But what was that particular agreement meant for? To improve infrastructures in universities, effective from a given year. In fact, it was late 2011. When we say, okay, that year's budget proposal, probably the government did not take into consideration.
So,
but 2012,
yeah.
If something was done in 2012, and probably to compensate for 2011, you could have been seen to be implementing the agreement faithfully. But you see, I don't want to hold brief for any of the parties. What I'm saying is that to the extent that the current crisis cannot be said to be a product of disagreement at the table to negotiate the subject of the demand.
So what would you do if you had all that expertise, as you said the Minister of Labour has?
Well, I would say that if one were to propose options, and if both sides agree that there is no disagreement on the agreements reached ab initio, and realizing the social status of those in compact, I would say there are options. Options of saying, okay, let's all submit ourselves to independent arbitrators nominated by both sides, which would work on how do we implement the agreement reached, not to renegotiate a new agreement. Mind you, there are two agreements reached. The first one is on the lease assessment. Second one is the one on the earned allowances, what I might call job-related allowances in the institutions.
And they are all part of the 2009 agreement?
Yes.
Let's talk about the instrumentality of strike itself. Do you think it's a weapon that's been overused?
Well, there's this common fallacy that strike should be a last resort. And you see, the atmosphere in a workplace oftentimes is seriously influenced by the environment in which they exist. That's why you can have a good employer that provides everything. But if the worker exists in a fairly hazardous atmosphere in which there is uncertainty, it might impact on his reactions. But that notwithstanding, it's a weapon which should not be used often. But to do that, both sides must admit that there is a need to address problems as urgently and as rapidly as they occur. You don't wait, because the worker is a rational human being. And before he goes on strike, it's oftentimes we forget that traditional leaders are never comfortable during strikes. They never. They have to think a lot.